Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Ripple Intent Podcast. I'm your host, John Grant, and I'm here with my co-host, Kyle Michkowski. Kyle, say hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
Ripple Intent, for those of you who are relatively new to us, is a nonprofit organization which is focused on building a community where individuals, organizations can bring a more human-centric focus to the workplace. We are trying to change the way we work together. And we are, as always, we love having all of these guests come on. I always get excited about this. Really happy to have Allie Spray with us today. Allie, go ahead and introduce yourself for listeners.
Hello, listeners of Ripple Intent. Thank you for the invitation, Kyle, Jon. Yes, I'm Allie Spray. I'm with Mortson, and I consider myself a disruptor in the industry.
And that you are. We've had you at some of our events, and you've spoke at one of the symposiums, and that is an understatement, to say the least.
It comes with a heavy title, but it's exciting, right? It's an industry we need more disruptions, and it's in a good way, in a positive, and just like to put people's some seeds of thoughts in prompt good conversations.
That's a great way to frame it, Allie, because every time I have a conversation with you, you make me think. You get my mind spinning about the possibility, what can we do? And that's really where we want to just continue that with you today and share those seeds with our listeners. You're a huge advocate for women in construction.
That's right.
And again, right, I love that about you, and I keep spinning in so many different directions. But let's kind of talk today. We really want to hear from you and start exploring what are some of the challenges that we see. We've seen, there's been a lot of progress, especially over the past few years, in terms of let's open up the gender conversation in the workplace, in construction in particular. Right, we've had a lot of bumps. We're making some moves, but we really feel like we need to continue talking about what's going on. How do we really advance bringing more women, whether it's into the field, into the office space, into the leadership roles? What does this look like? How do we go about it? And frankly, a lot of the things are common to all people, but let's open this up and talk about it a little bit. So can you kind of share with us just sort of some high level, like what are some of the challenges that have been creating difficulty for women in the workplace?
Yeah, thank you. We can have different episodes about this, right? And we can keep talking. And like you say, we're making progress in what we need to keep doing. But let's celebrate we have been doing something already. We have been bringing this awareness that women bring a talent, bring the skills, bring the smarts, bring the different perspectives, bring the team collaboration. But when I started, even when I told my family I want to be a civil engineer, my dad being one, he was the first one saying, no, this is not a job for women. So I'm that person when you told me I can't, I will show you, yes, I can. And I remember I have a teacher telling me I should be learning how to be a wife. So I think the first challenge is that stereotype, right, of what women need to be doing. And sometimes if you go in the specific cultures, in the Hispanic culture, we're taught, yeah, you can go to college, but you should start aiming to be married and somebody will support you. And, so I think I started that disruptor title since I was in college, proving people I'm going to do my own path. And I think that's the scary part also for women. When we're doing our own path, sometimes we see ourselves supported by other women. We see ourselves supported by men or allies. But at the same time, we also see being put obstacles by women and men. And people ask me why women are so mean to each other. And I keep thinking about it. It's like, well, if you think about there's only one position in a company that is going to open every 5 years, guess what? We're all going to fight for it. And yes, we might be mean to each other because they're giving us one shot every blue moon, as I call it. And sometimes we feel there's a statistic saying that women change jobs more often than men do, because that's the point. We are moving. Sometimes we sacrifice our family time. I have missed talking my kids in bed. I have missed being in events, but they know that's my drive. And they don't judge me for that, but I do that. And that's another layer. Women, we judge ourselves so hard because we have to either choose a family, a career. And, it's just hard because we feel we put our career in pause. So when we come back after having families, we have to start all over. So we decide to move. For men, it's not always that way, right? If a man decides to start a family, maybe it's seen as more responsible, as a more approachable. And people don't worry, it's like he's going to miss work because of the kid, because he might have a wife or somebody that helps him. For a woman, the challenge of, if I have a family, how is that going to be approached? And the other part of women, the division that creates is the working moms or the single women, right? When we single women say, well, she has a kid and she has to live and it's okay. I don't. I might just have a pet. And I have to take care of my dog, my cat, or my parents, or something else. Well, it's not a kid. So people feel like now it's the division of single woman, married woman, women with kids. And we're making that distinction among ourselves that is hurting us, right? So is that amongst women, we have that battle. If I have a family, how my other female friends are going to feel like, oh, now you have to take the slack that I'm not picking up, right? And the misconception that, women, we multitask. Let's forget about that. We have to be focused on something because we're exhausting ourselves and we're getting tired and we're saying, I'm not seeing myself moving up. I'm not seeing myself being promoted. I'm not seeing myself being heard. So maybe I need to leave and try a different industry or focus in my family. There's the fears that, like you were saying, the common fears that not only women, but people meant to have them, but maybe women, we kind of focus on those. And that's also a hinder for our advancement. And that's what I talk about about fears on my own self-discovery when I read this book called Hello Fears. And I learned about it and I have done presentations about them.
So yeah, we were talking earlier. You just recently did a presentation on confidence, and what you were sharing was fascinating, especially the fear piece. You articulated there were 4 fears, and it resonated as we were preparing for this conversation, because we've talked a few times through various Ripple and Ton events about fears that we all have, and you were very specific on the 4. So can you share what those are? And let's unpack each one of them.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm not saying I'm fearless. I'm just saying I'm brave because I recognize them now. I label them when they're trying to crawl in my head. So I read them from that book, Hello Fear. So the first fear is the embarrassment, right? We're afraid of asking questions. We're afraid of giving our opinion. We're afraid of just saying this is not right. And mostly for my young professionals, because they come out of college saying, I don't know anything once they see the real world. And I say, you know something, you spent 4 or 5 years studying. So you know something and you have a power to say it. And the next one is the rejection that ties to the embarrassment. If I say a comment or if I suggest something and they don't accept it, do I feel empowered to do it again? Do I feel confident to do it again? So I prefer to keep my thoughts, my ideas, my suggestions, my feedback to myself, because I don't want to be rejected. And, it comes, I call people, I say, sometimes it's like that deja vu moment when you ask somebody to the dance and they say no. So it hurts you. So it's literally it's a physical pain when people tell you no. So that's another thing that hinders us. Then there's the loneliness. We saw it during the pandemic, and for the extroverts, oh my God, that was painful, right? We cannot see people. We cannot hug people. My kids were sick of me giving them hugs every 5 minutes because I needed that interaction. But that loneliness also ties us to try to please everybody, try to be somebody that we are really not, just to make sure that we are likable and we're accepted in a group, in a company, in a relationship. So we tie ourselves, we hold ourselves to relationships they're toxic to us. They compromise our values. They compromise who we really are, and we cannot be ourselves for that. And the last but not least is the control. And for this industry, that we need to feel like we have the control of a schedule, a budget, a timeline, a subcontractors, of everything. At the end, we really don't have control of anything. But I feel like I'm losing control. I cannot prove it. I cannot show that I cannot do it. So we have to be honest and say, what can you really control? Is the same reaction. You cannot control people's reactions. You can only control what you react to that. You cannot control people, how they act to you. You can only control your reactions and how you take that attitude to you.
That's so deep. Yeah, like we were saying before, I can really appreciate how, these can be confidence crushers, right, for women in particular, but each of those I've experienced all of those, sometimes at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. That gets so challenging. And some of that, let's kind of talk a little bit, because you shared something that is really interesting for me. The how some of those fears, we try to offset them, right, with the whole idea of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And that phrase bothers you. It drives me nuts. But talk to us a little bit about that and how you flip it.
So, lately we have heard, and I have been in presentations about imposter syndrome. And let me do my disclaimer, like those commercial pharmaceutical companies saying the little disclaimer, right? I'm not saying that I'm an expert. I'm not saying I don't have them. I'm not saying they're not valid. All feelings are valid. If some people have that imposter syndrome, is valid. It's just, for me, I make the analogies like when I go to my doctor for my regular check-in. Hey, you're fine. You have all your tests good. Oh, but by the way, we found this. So now you have this. Now you have low blood pressure or high blood pressure. And I'm like, well, I didn't know about that. Now I'm going to be thinking about it. So now when they told us, you might have imposter syndrome. So for me, it's like, no, now we have to carry something else in our shoulder to think about, to fight it, to figure out how to do it. But then I started thinking, well, it makes sense when we have heard for men and women, you have to fake it until you make it. Fake it until you make it. Well, I'm tired of this faking it. First, because I'm not being authentic. Second, because when I make it to where I was supposed to make it to, I'm questioning myself, did I really make it because of me or because I was faking it? So for me, is that thanks to the book, I learned this motto now is like, believe it until you become it. Believe you have the knowledge, believe you have the expertise, regardless of 1, 5, 20 years in this industry. Believe that you know something, believe that you have something to contribute to your team. And you will become that expert in whatever you want to learn. So for me, yes, imposter syndrome is out there, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on what I know and how I can help others with that. So that's my disruptor kind of self-proclaimed title, and that's my quest to do that too.
So believe it till you become it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Every one of those fears contributes to the imposter syndrome, every single one of them. Because obviously, we've talked about it before too. The embarrassment one is always one of my favorites, because nobody wants to look stupid. And we spend a lot of time in our breakfast clubs talking about how to create that space where people can actually be okay looking stupid. And we've seen it too, where team and group think takes over. And all of a sudden, if everyone's on board and you're the one to raise your hand and go, can I ask a question? Because I'm not on board yet. That could be all kinds of impacts for sure. And certainly feeding into the imposter syndrome, where that self-doubt, especially in a group, becomes so strong. And how do you find the courage to ask the questions? Because that kind of goes into the control piece too. Asking questions is very different than coming across as confident and understanding and knowing. And there is a big difference there, and there's a risk with both.
Yeah. But we have to be vulnerable. The other layer that I have found too is sometimes the power of words. Some words take already our confidence away. So for women, sometimes we apologize so many times. sorry for this, sorry for that. Even in our emails, sorry for not replying, sorry for not giving this information. Sorry. Oh, sorry, this might be a dumb question. Sorry if I have to ask a question. Sorry if I'm in your space. There's a commercial years ago, I think a shampoo brand, Pantene, make a commercial about sorry, women saying sorry. And it's just fascinating how much we say sorry. And I talked to some of my young professionals, my mentees, about there's some words that just as you say them, they're taking your power, your confidence. And I just want to clarify, confident doesn't mean you be arrogant. It's two different things. You're confident to ask the questions, confident to say, I don't know about that, so I'm going to ask a question. And arrogant is saying, I know everything. So I just want to make sure that people know confident is knowing what you know and what you don't know. And you're still confident to ask those questions, ask for that help, ask for that mentorship. But there's some words that I know that I feel that I have used in my career. Can I ask a dumb question? I don't know much about this. I'm not an expert, So there's some words that we have to eliminate and just rephrase or use a different narrative when we are interacting with our teams too.
Where's the I'm sorry come from? And is that, I mean, that's different than apologizing, like genuinely apologizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then that's what I say. I'm sorry, unless I really physically or emotionally hurt you, that I know that I created some damage. I don't use the sorry anymore. I have an inbox that I'm going through it all the time. So if I haven't replied to somebody, I say, thank you for your patience as I go through my inbox, right? And even I apologize. It's a little bit also I don't try to use it, but I think is that we're trying to apologize for being in this space, for trying to make it into a male industry. So we feel like, I'm sorry that I'm breaking in here. Sorry that I'm trying to make my way here. I'm sorry that I'm a disruptor. No, I am here. I'm contributing. We're almost 50% of the population as consumers, as creators, as everything. We have a space here. And I owe it to my mentor, Barbara Jackson. She told me one time, you don't get to tell me where I belong. You don't get to tell me my worth. And I think that has also fed my confidence of, I know what I'm worth. I know what I bring to the table. So you don't get to tell me what the place that I get to be.
Yeah, that I'm sorry. It's almost like a preposition. It's not an actual apology. It's just even it's a sentence starter. And, my English teacher brother-in-law probably just had a little conniption fit. Sorry, Greg. But it's that sort of, right, that initial piece where it's just, you throw it out there, and yet that little phrase it puts you in the subservient position immediately. I mean, right. So even on the male side, right, I will find myself writing it in an email, right? Like, hey, I'm sorry it took me so long to get back to you. And then I have to be thoughtful. I'm like, well,
Are you?
Am I really? Right?
Yeah.
Like, sorry,
it's just
I'm not sorry.
Right social cue to do at that moment.
Do it.
Exactly.
But it's a sincere sorry, right? That's right, Kyle.
Right.
It's really, are you sorry? I'm just being honest. I'm navigating through my inbox. Apologies or thank you for your patience. So I'm getting to it, because unless you really tell me you need an answer right away, we are all in this. All of our inboxes are waiting for somebody to follow with us. And, and the same thing, we're waiting for somebody's answers. But yeah, when you type the story, you're already putting yourself like vulnerable, servant, or yes, I did something wrong.
Can you talk a little bit more about the fear of losing control?
Yes. I'm the TV show Friends. I'm a Monica, if you know that. I like to have control. And as a mom, I know what's going on and what happens. And there's a point like I'm just stressing about trying to figure out everything and anything. And one time in my career, they offered me to be a project manager. And I say, oh gosh, no, that will drive me nuts because I know what I can do, but being at the mercy, for the lack of a better word, of somebody else, and sometimes our subcontractors or trade partners, like we call them, they don't even have control of what's going on, right? So we feel like we don't have control in this industry. We need to have it. Well, let's be honest. What can you control? You cannot control the weather. You cannot control the supplies. You cannot control how people show up or how people don't show up for work, right? You can only control your reaction, how you go across and face that situation. So the motto I use from the book I read is, what's the best that can happen if the worst happen? And this was the authors talking about, she was going to have a launch in person, and of course pandemic hit, and everything got canceled. So she was mopping, angry, sad, and everything. And her publisher said, well, now we're going to do it virtual. Instead of having 300 people in a room, now you're going to have 3,000 people in the forum. So she couldn't have that in person, but what was the best? She was able to reach out more. And there's some situations that maybe it's hard to find the best outcome, but I think maybe I'm the ever optimistic person. There is something positive of every situation, a lesson learned, a different way to communicate with somebody. Okay, this happens, how we can gonna work and prevent something else like this happen in the future, right? So I think unless it's something safety and there's a really sad ending, I think we can figure out what is the best that we can get of a situation that we don't have control. The emotions that we have control is our own emotions. But we like to punish ourselves. We like to make a martyr of ourselves when something doesn't go the right way.
Yeah, it's a good point about the emotion piece, because there's I remember when I was growing up, my parents used to say, you know, if you want emotions at work, you wait till you get home and you tell your parents. If you want someone to cry to, or if you want someone to really care about it, then that's what your mom and dad are for. It's not the people you work with. Work is work. And we know that with the right, I don't want to say balance, that's not true. With the right environment where, and this happens all the time. I just had this the other day. Something happened and someone got really worked up about it. And in venting and expressing feelings, he said, I know I'm just complaining and I shouldn't be doing all of this. And the response from me was, actually, you should be, because you're a human being and your emotional heartstrings are being pulled, and in some cases plucked and cut and just destroyed. And you should be angry and upset and frustrated, and you should not have to bury that. But sharing that with me is different than going to, say, a staff meeting or a project meeting and just going, all right, I'm going to vent about all this stuff, right? I would say there's an appropriate place. The reaction is the reaction no matter what happens. You are going to feel all those things, and you have to allow yourself to feel those things. You can't let the industry or your workplace or the people around you say there's no place for that stuff. It's like, well, the only other place is to keep it inside, and we know what happens when you keep it inside. So being aware and conscious that the emotions are fine, and yes, you have to express them. It's not so much about you anymore. Now it's about the other people, and giving them space to express them, to allow them to process through all of those things, go through the flow, be in that emotional state, however long they need to be. And eventually they'll resolve their own emotions and decide, okay, now I have to do something. I have to act. I have to respond. I have to engage. I have to. And there's so many times where you want to fire off that at me and right back with the F this and da-da-da and name calling. And it's like, yeah, feel that way. Get it out there. Don't hit send. Walk away. Come back. Revisit. If you got to do it again, do it again. So it's that the emotions are absolutely 100% fine, is I think the message. It's okay to do all of that and feel all of that and go through all of that. It's not that you're weak. It's not that you are lonely. It's not that you should feel embarrassed if you feel these things. That's 100% normal.
Yeah. And Jon, you and I, we have talked about it, right? Now everybody talk about DI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the industry. And I have told you, all boils down to humanity, to see each other how we are. And that's what you're talking about, Kyle. It's not about seeing, oh, I'm emotional all the time. No, there's something that happened outside work that I cannot just leave at home. I cannot just live in my car. If you're asking me to come and be authentic, I'm having issues. If I don't feel safe in the environment that I'm working on, where am I going to be safe if I spend 40, 50, 60 hours here? right? So it's about, if we're really embracing these DI initiatives, hot buzz, whatever you want to call being woke, we have to be sure that we're seeing people as they are. And yes, you don't call a staff meeting to tell them you're having a bad day, but now there's articles saying if you have a friend that is a coworker, the chances of you staying in that job or you feeling safe increases because you have somebody to talk to. And that person maybe helps you diffuse or kind of helps you manage those before you go to a big meeting, because people can listen to you and you understand. Sometimes it's just somebody to listen. And when you hear the words coming out of your mouth, it's like, okay, I can control this. I cannot control this. I will figure this out. This one, it still hurts me. But again, if we're really embracing DI, it's not about, I put my mask, the professional alley, and then in my car, I'm going home alley. This is alley. Raw, crazy, positive, outspoken, professional, everything. But you have to find the situations where you bring those two. But, you have to be safe to feel like I can be myself and I can express myself too.
So I feel like, gosh, I love this, Ellie. I'm a very internal processor, right? All those anxieties, those fears, there's the constant, like everyone's got their own internal monologue, right? Mine is really loud. And sometimes I just find myself sitting and ruminating on those kinds of things. And so the only thing I found that really helps is you're both kind of talking about a little bit, is I have to find a safe person to which I can share what's going on. And, and that's not, I mean, I do that with my wife at home, but in the workplace, I think, like we were saying, that's a really valuable space. So to be able to address the fear, to be able to address the anxiety, and have someone that you can identify, maybe it's one, maybe it's a small group, right? Because a lot of times that project meeting, right, the big team meeting, that's not necessarily the place to bring all of these things out, right? But knowing that we're all dealing with our own inner monologues, this is like part of the burden that everyone carries. So if we can recognize that's happening, and then you identify that safe person with whom you can talk things out, work through it, process it, and also having that support network that just says, hey, right, I'm going to go, and I have more courage to be the more authentic me out in the world when I know I can come back and process some of those fears with my safe people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I think that paying attention to the gender, the race element, those different components, like it's you and I have had some of that conversation too, where everyone's coming in with their different context. And so we need to recognize that they have that context, right? Whether it's whether there's some mental health issues, there are all sorts of these pieces and parts. And that's really, honestly, the only way I've been able to deal with any of this is finding those people to be able to talk about it. And that's honestly the only thing that gives me courage to go forward and try something different and get out of my shell in the group setting.
Hey, so we're just about out of time. Before we go, before Jon sends us off this episode, one question for each of you, and I'll answer as well. And that is, if there was one thing that you want to send off with everyone listening today, what's the one thing that you would send them off with?
Ellie, you're first.
I knew that was gonna come. I was gonna tie to you what you said, Jon, about having that safe person, because sometimes we only rely on that inner critic, that inner voice that we have, right? And sometimes it's not the best one to run or thoughts or emotions. And I did the confidence. It was about that, muting that inner critic. Give it a name if that makes you feel better. So you tell them not right now. It's about finding that person that cares about you. Is the caring, but also knowing that your fears are valid. they're there. They're never going to go away. Fears are emotions, and emotions don't go away. It's like I say, you have to be confident, not arrogant, just confident to know your worth, to know where you belong. And one of the favorite quotes that I saw the other day in a mural was, what if I fall, right? But what if you find your wings and you fly?
I love that. So I would say through all our conversation here, it reminded me, I met this guy years ago up in Pacific Northwest in Oregon, Benji Howe, and he taught me this tool, which was signposting. And what that meant, if you got a lot of stuff on your mind and you go into a staff meeting and you're grumpy, your signpost is, hey, just give me a little space right now, I'm grumpy. And people go, all right. You don't have to explain, you don't have to go into detail, you're just, I got a lot going on, and that's it. So you can do that effectively without going to one extreme or the other. Don't make people guess, why does Kyle have angry face on today? It's like, oh, because then you start thinking, it's me, I did something wrong and he's mad at me, and what did I do? And instead of doing that, you're just like, look, I just got a lot on my head, I'll get through this, but right now just give me a little bit of space. And people go, okay, and they move on. So yeah, signposting from Benji, I loved it.
Awesome.
It's me, it's not you. Or is it? Wait, it's you, it's not me.
It's us.
It's us.
It's us. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. My takeaway, honestly, is right. You're not alone. Everyone is going through all these things, and so the more we can give people that a little bit of grace and understanding that we're coming in with our own issues, concerns, and I'm now going to try signposting, but yeah, we need to just recognize that and allow for it.
Awesome.
So, Ali, thank you so much for being here.
Guys.
I could talk with you all day long. We will continue this conversation. We're going to have more episodes coming out shortly. So listeners, thank you for joining us again. You can find us online at rippleintent.org or on LinkedIn. And on our website, you'll find our events in numerous cities all across the country. We would love to see you there. Come join us and participate in the conversation. And until then, have a great day, and we'll be talking with you on the next episode.